Egypt's ousted former president, Hosni Mubarak, has died at the age of 91, according to state television, being quoted by the Reuters news agency. Of course, he ruled Egypt for 30 years. Let's take it live to our correspondent, JAMAL ELSHAYYAL, who's followed the Egypt story, the Mubarak story, for a long time here on Al Jazeera English. JAMAL, what else do we know?
This comes exactly almost 9 years since Hosni Mubarak was forced out of office by that popular uprising you mentioned there, Peter. Obviously, he was forced out on the 11th of February 2011. State media now announcing that Mubarak has passed. There had been rumors for many, many years about his health. There had been instances of him being admitted into hospital and coming out. However, he, was his reputation seemed formidable, even against the different illnesses that he went through. Obviously, they haven't given specific details of what led to his final demise, or whether it was just a natural passing, as it's expected. But what we're looking at now is a statesman who essentially was so controversial in the past 3-4 decades of Egypt's history. It was under his rule that many people saw that Egypt became a lot more corrupt. It was under his rule that the infrastructure of the country people saw demising. So whether it was the thousands of cases of hepatitis C and other diseases that spread through the Egyptian population, or whether it was the sudden increase in police brutality, which ultimately led to people taking to the streets on January 25th. Those are a lot of the things that many people will be remembering him by. There are those who supported him, obviously, however, who remember him as a military general, as a statesman who tried to maybe establish some sort of new balance in the Middle East between different political forces. But for sure, his passing is something that is going to remind people of the situation in Egypt, as well as obviously the political legacy that he left behind, which is one that has allowed for the current military regime to continue in its ruling.
The region and the rest of the world, I guess, over the intervening few years has adapted to the idea that Mr. El-Sisi is in charge of Egypt as we speak right now. But when we talk about Hosni Mubarak, I mean, his legacy is a multifaceted concept. It's not easy to sum up what his legacy would be, if only because he was there for so very long.
For sure. I mean, if you look at the different massive incidents that took place, so whether it was the 1990s Gulf War, whether it was him taking office right after the assassination of the former president Anwar Sadat, whether it was building between Egypt and Israel, or striking that balance between Iran on one side and then Saudi Arabia and other countries on the other. There are so many different instances where Mubarak molded for himself and for his vision of what Egypt's policies should be in the region, some sort of role. But as you mentioned there, the comparison between him and Sisi, obviously, people will look at, but there is complete difference in that. Even domestically speaking, the way in which Sisi, or rather Mubarak, ruled, one of designating specific roles to different. So the security services had its power and influence, the judiciary had its power and influence, the military obviously had the bigger stake, but there was also a role for businessmen, private sector. Even the Muslim Brotherhood were allowed to participate up to a certain amount within the political spectrum. This is something that we've seen a huge departure from since Sisi's rule, and probably arguably that there has been that criticism that it was because there was certain allowances, if that's the right word to use, that Mubarak gave, although people would say it was the rights of the people. But maybe those coming from a more autocratic background would say because of the allowances that Mubarak gave, that's what led to people essentially then demanding for more in 2011, and that's why there has been that departure. But definitely he was somebody who will be as controversial as he is, will leave behind a very strong legacy, not least because of those 3 decades that he was in power.